During the last lecture, we have been talking about the Poisson's and the Laplace's equation, and we also discussed how to obtain capacitances of few geometries starting from Poisson's and Laplace's equation, rather than from the intuitive nature of the potential which we had earlier. In this lecture, we will continue with the formal solutions of Laplace's equation, which is the equation which is valid in regions where there are no charges. You recall that Poisson's equation, which is del square of the potential, is equal to the charge density divided by epsilon 0 with a minus sign. That was valid in regions where there are charge sources of charge present. But we will be talking about source free region, namely charge density is equal to 0, and so therefore, the equation that we are looking for is the Laplace's equation, which is del square of phi equal to 0. Phi is my notation for the potential. What we will do is to look at formal solutions of these equations in 1, 2 and 3 dimension. So, let us look at first the simplest of the problem, namely I look at the problem in 1 dimension, for which this equation is d square phi by d x square is equal to 0, the simplest of the second order equation that you can think of. So, if the second derivative is 0, the first derivative d phi by d x, that is equal to a constant. So, let us call it some m, and phi itself is one more integration, which gives me m x plus a constant equal to c. We all know that y equal to m x plus c is an equation to a straight line. So, as a result, the equation that I have, the graph of the potential versus the distance, is something like this. It is a straight line. So, notice one thing, the solution of this equation, as we will see it is a common feature with Laplace's equation, is essentially featureless. It is a very monotonically increasing function in this case, or decreasing function. And an important point is that if you are looking at the value of the potential at any point x, since this is a straight line, what you could do is to find out, for example, what is the value of the potential. So, this is the point x, you could find out what is the potential at, let us say, x plus a and at x minus a, and you can easily show that the potential at the point x is the average of the value of the potential at a point x plus a and x minus a. A is absolutely arbitrary. So, of course, it is very clear from the nature of the solution that there are no maxima or minima in the solution of this problem. We will see that this averaging is actually a common feature of the solutions. So, since it is an averaging, I cannot obviously have the minimum or a maximum, because then the value at a midpoint between maximum and minimum cannot be actually an average. So, let us look at what happens in 2 dimensions. Once again the same statement is true, namely the functions which are solutions of Laplace's equations, they do not show any features, they do not show any maximum or minimum. Let me illustrate this with a very simple example. Let me look at a form of an equation which satisfies the Poisson's equation. For example, consider a function of x y, which is simply a by 4, a is a constant, into x square plus y square. Now, let us look at what is del square. Remember, we are in 2 dimension. So, del square implies d square by dx square partial derivatives plus d square by dy square partial derivatives. So, therefore, my del square of phi in 2 dimension is simply equal to a. You can see it, first derivative gives you 2 x a by 4, that is a x by 2. The second derivative will give me another, it will reduce the power by 1. So, I will have a by 2 into x, just a by 2, I am sorry, just a by 2, and similarly the second derivative of this will be another a by 2, and as a result the total second derivative is equal to a. Now, this is of course not a Laplace's equation, this looks like a Poisson's equation. And now, this solution, if you plot, here is a GNU plot of the function, you notice this function that it looks like a cup, and so there is a minimum at the point x equal to 0, y equal to 0, and that is very obvious, because this is a positive function everywhere, and since the function is positive, its absolute minimum value can be 0. So, once you are at the bottom, then of course, the value of the function has to rise no matter which direction you go to. So, this is a function with a minimum. Now, consider for example, a slightly different function, namely phi of x y. The phi of x y is, let us say, instead of a by 4 x square plus y square, I have x square minus y square. Now, you can immediately check that del square of phi works out to be equal to 0, which means this is Laplace's equation. Now, supposing you were to plot this function, this is del square phi equal to 0, a by 4 x square minus y square. Now, what happens at the point x equal to 0, y equal to 0? Is that a minimum? The answer is no. Look at this structure here. Now, the point x equal to 0, y equal to 0 is what is known as a saddle point. You all know what is a saddle. A saddle is a seat on the back of a horse. Now, if you have looked at a saddle, you will realize that in one direction, if you go in one direction, that is along the back of the horse, this function will go down, but on the other hand, if you go in the other direction, the function will go up. It is a saddle, it is not a maximum, because there are regions where the value of the functions is greater than the value at x equal to 0. On the other hand, it is not a minimum, because there are regions, for example, in this part where the value of the function is smaller than its value at x equal to 0, y equal to 0. So, once again that tells me that the Laplace's equation solutions, at least from the examples that we have pointed out, they do not show any features. It does not have a minimum, it does not have a maximum, and so we have seen that the averaging property works and things like that. A consequence of this type of thing that we are doing is what is known as an Earnshaws theorem. Now, Earnshaws theorem states that supposing you have a charged particle, the theorem states that it is not possible for a charged particle to be in equilibrium, static equilibrium, only by action of electrostatic forces. There are other ways of keeping it in equilibrium, but if the only force that is there is an electrostatic force, you can't keep the charge in equilibrium. Now, why? Now, look at this. I know that if I have a charge q in a potential field V, the energy of that will be equal to q times V. Now, if the energy is q times V and the charge is in a region which satisfies Laplace's equation, because there are no sources in that region, the So, I have del square V equal to 0, which implies that the del square of the energy function, which is q times the potential, that is also equal to 0. Now, if del square of V equal to 0 or del square of q V, I am using the symbol V for both potential and phi also for potential, should not cause any confusion at this moment. Now, this solution does not have a minimum, at least we have seen just now. Now, if the energy function does not have a minimum, then clearly the configuration cannot be stable, it cannot be in stable equilibrium. So, this is known as Earnshaws theorem, follows from the fact there is no minimum in energy, which in turn follows from the fact that the potential function satisfies the Poisson's equation. Now, we will come back to solutions of Laplace equation in 2 dimension a little while later, but at this moment we will jump to these solutions in 3 dimension in different types of geometries. The 3 types of geometry which we are concerned with primarily are the rectangular Cartesian, for which the Laplacian equation is simply del square phi by dx square, del square phi by dy square and del square phi by dz square. This is Cartesian form. The spherical polar form, depending upon distance r, polar angle theta and azimuth phi, is given by this expression here. We will be talking later about this equation in detail. In cylindrical rho theta z coordinate, as you know that the z coordinate is same as that of the Cartesian. So, therefore, the Cartesian expression remains the same, and the other two are basically the polar in the x y plane, and that is the way it looks like. Okay, so, let us look at the solution of Laplace's equation in 3 dimension. First, we will take up the rectangular or the Cartesian coordinates, and then we will look at the spherical polar. Now, in Cartesian coordinates we have seen that I have got del square phi by dx square plus del square phi by dy square plus del square phi by dz square equal to 0. Okay. We know that we would like to solve this problem subject to some boundary conditions. Now, let me say I have chosen a region of a rectangular parallel pipe whose dimensions are length, breadth and height are L1 along the x direction, L2 along the y direction and L3 along the z direction. On the 6 surfaces, I have certain values of the potential specified. So, these are my boundary conditions. Now, what we will do however is use the fact that the solutions obey superposition principle. So, instead of giving all the 6 conditions, I will work out in detail the solution for a problem where on the 5 sides of the rectangular parallelepiped, the potential will be taken to be 0. If they are conductors, it means they will be grounded. And on the 6th side, I will say that the potential function is known to me. So, let me state that in this way. So, I have this, this is my x, y and the z direction coming out of the plane of the picture, and on 5 of these, that is when x is equal to 0 and x equal to L1, y is equal to 0, y is equal to L2 and z is equal to 0. These 5 surfaces, the potential value is 0. On the 6th surface, which is at z is equal to L3, the potential distribution as a function of x y is known to me. So, that is f x y. How does one solve this problem? Now, supposing you have 6 different boundary conditions. Now, I could actually solve these subject to a given boundary condition on each one of them, and then sort of make a superposition of these to get a general solution. But at this moment, I am looking at a specific problem where on 5 surfaces the potential value is given to be 0, and on the 6th surface, which is at z is equal to L3, the potential function is known to be some given function f, which is of course a function of x and y, because the z is constant there. Now, so let us look at this equation. The method that one follows is what is known as separation of variables. The separation of variable works this way, that this function phi is taken to be a product of 3 functions. Function capital X, which depends upon x only, function capital Y depends upon y only, and function capital Z depends upon z only. Recall, at this moment I do not know whether this trick will work or not, but if this trick works, then I will fall back on the uniqueness of the solutions and say that, look, by this trick I have found the solutions, and so therefore, that must be the only solution. So, let us look at this. So, you notice this, that so what will happen is, look at this term d square phi by dx square. So, since capital Y and capital Z are constant, I will get from this term y z times d square capital X by dx square, plus here I will get x z d square capital Y by dy square, plus x y d square capital Z by dz square, that is equal to 0. Let me divide this equation by capital X y z. That will give me 1 over capital X d square x by dx square, plus 1 over capital Y d square y by dy square, plus 1 over capital Z d square z by dz square, that is equal to 0. Now, look at this equation. In this equation, I have got 3 terms, the first term depending on x only, second term depending upon y only, third term depending upon z only, and there are variations here with respect to x, here with respect to y, and here with respect to z. And I am making a big demand that sum of these 3 must be equal to 0. Now, since x, y, z they vary arbitrarily in the space, this is too tall an order, and the only way we can do that is that if each one of these terms is a constant, subject to the fact that 3 of those constants coming from 3 equations become equal to 0. So, this is purely because of the fact that the variation of each is independent. So, what do I get? So, let me write then the first equation will be 1 over x d square x by dx square is a constant. So, let me take this to be equal to some let us take minus k x square times constant. This k x square, this x is because I am getting this constant related associated with this x. So, this is a constant value. Let me take d square y over dy square is equal to minus k y square into y, but d square z by dz square then has to be related to these two constants in such a way that the corresponding kz square, if I take it. So, I will take d square z by dz square is equal to plus kz square, I will take z subject to the fact that kx square minus ky square plus kz square is equal to 0. Where all that we know about kx, ky and kz are that they are constants. Now, let us look at what happens to the corresponding boundary conditions. Remember, on 5 of the faces, the potentials were 0. So, I can translate that and say that look, since x depends only on x. So, this implies that the capital X function at x equal to 0 must be 0, and it also has to be 0 at the value L 1. The same is true for y. Y must be 0 at 0 and at L 2. About z, of course, I have a slightly different story, because the value of capital Z must be equal to 0 at z is equal to 0, but at z is equal to L 3 it must be equal to constant. The solutions of these equations, for example, the first equation which I have taken as d square x by dx square is equal to minus kx square x, is also well known to all of us, and the solutions of course are capital X as a function of x is a sin kx x. Now, notice that I have chosen these two surfaces. At x equal to 0, I have got the value of the capital X equal to 0, it is automatically satisfied because I have taken a sine function. But there is one more demand. We say that x at x equal to L 1 is also equal to 0. This implies that sine of k x L 1 is equal to 0, which immediately tells me that the k x values must be such that it must be multiple of pi over L 1, where m is an integer. M is an integer, it is plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, etc. I can't take m to be equal to 0, because that would mean that the function itself is 0. So, which is of course not what we are looking for. Now, identical statement is true for the y function. So, y of y is equal to sine k y y. The boundary condition at y equal to 0 is automatically satisfied, and the boundary condition at L 2 tells me that this should be an integer n divided by L 2. So far so good, on 4 sides the solutions have been satisfied. Now, once I have taken k x square and k y square to be positive, or k x square and k y square to be positive, the k z square term which is associated with the z equation is a negative, that its solution cannot be trigonometric function, because that equation now is d square z by dz square is equal to plus kz square z, and since this is a positive value, I know its solution will be exponential with real arguments. However, I also have one more condition to be satisfied, and that is the value of capital Z at z is equal to 0 is also 0. Now, I know they are not trigonometric function, they are exponential function, and so therefore, what I do is to choose the solution to be a hyperbolic sine function. So, we will take capital Z to be given by hyperbolic sine of k z z. Remember, sine hyperbolic of z at z equal to 0 is 0. Okay, so, this is the solution I take. This is actually not equal to, but should be constant times that. Now, let us look at the k x, k y and k z. We have seen that k z square is equal to k x square plus k y square. So, that tells me that this k z is given by square root of k x square plus k y square, and since k x is m pi over L 1 square and k y is n pi over L 2 square root. So, this quantity k z can be also written as k m n. It tells me that in order to specify k z, you need two indices m and n. So, therefore, my solution, which is phi x y z, is now a linear combination. Linear combination because m and n can vary from 1 to infinity, each one of them. Coefficient C m n, sine function of m pi over L 1 into x, another sine function of n pi over L 2 into y, and of course, sine hyperbolic of k m n z. So, this is my solution, but there is still a sixth boundary condition to be satisfied, and this sixth boundary condition is that when z is equal to L 3, the value of the potential at every point on that plane, you remember z is given, but x and y varies, and that is a known function f of x y. So, if you look at this, then we get phi of x, y and z is equal to L 3. This is simply substituting z is equal to L 3 into this equation, but this value is a function, given function of x and y. So, this is equal to, just to rewrite, m n equal to 1 to infinity C m n sine of m pi over L 1 x sine n pi over L 2 y sine hyperbolic k m n times L 3. That is your f x y. Now, I can determine this constant C m n by using the properties, the orthogonal properties of the integrals. You notice that here I have given you an integral. This is d x of sine m pi x over L, sine m prime pi x over L, where m prime is another index. Now, if you integrate this, you will find only when m is equal to m prime, it gives you L by 2. Otherwise, when you take the integral from 0 to L, it gives me 0. So, that is why it is written as L by 2 times, this is called a Kronecker delta, delta m m prime, that is equal to 0 if m is not equal to m prime and is equal to 1 if m is equal to m prime. Now, if you recall that integration, then you notice that I come to this equation here. I integrate, I multiply this both sides by sine m pi x over L 1 and n pi y over L 2. okay, and integrated. Actually speaking, what I do is to multiply with, I should have said m prime n prime, but I know that unless m prime equal to m and n prime equal to n, these CMNs will go away. So, this is what I get there, this is what I get there, and so that tells me that if I know the function f x y and I have been given everything else that I require there, and in principle if I can do those integrations, then in principle CMN, these coefficients are known to me. So, let us take a very special case. If I take a special case where I take this function f x y, let us say is constant. Now, if you go back, notice this, that in CMN I have two integrals, a double integral over x and y, but if this f x y is constant, then of course, these integrals become product of two different independent integrals, and sine integrals are very trivial integrals to be done. So, I use the fact that integral of dx sine m pi x over L is L by m pi cosine m pi x over L, and the limits of integrations are from 0 to L 1. So, for dx integration, this is L 1 and that is L 1, but this is a generic relation. Now, in the upper limit, I have cosine of m pi. I know that is nothing but minus 1 to the power m. Lower limit is of course 1. So, this integral is L by m pi minus 1 to the power m minus 1. This tells me that this has a value which is 0 if m is even, because then it becomes 1 minus 1. If m is odd, I get a minus 2 there, because minus 1 to the power odd number is minus 1, and I also have another minus 1 there. So, I get, so the result of this equation is, it is equal to minus 2 L by m pi if m is odd, and is equal to 0 if m is even. So, if you look at this expression for CMN, CMN is L by L1, L2, etc., and I have this f x y which is now constant and product of two integrations, and each one of the integral I know how to do it. So, if you plug it in, you find this to be equal to 16 over m n pi square 1 over sine hyperbolic k m n L 3, and this will be non-zero only if neither m nor n is even, because if any one of them is even, because it is being multiplied, the corresponding integral is 0. So, when both m and n are odd, CMN is non-zero in this case. So, that essentially completes our solution in the rectangular coordinates, and with this we will go over to the solution of Laplace's equation in spherical coordinates. The spherical coordinates Laplacian form is a little complicated, but it turns out that the principle of separation of variable that we talked about still works here, though with a slight bit of a modification. So, let us look at what does it get me. First, my del square of phi, here I will be a little careful in writing the potential function phi, because the azimuthal angle is also denoted by phi. So, this is given by 1 over r square d by dr of r square d phi by dr, this is the radial part. Polar, the angle part is r square sin theta d by d theta of sin theta d phi by d theta. And finally, I have got 1 over r square sin square theta d square over d phi square. This is my azimuthal angle of phi, and that is equal to 0. Now, what we will do is we will have the same trick, that is, look at the possibility of separation of variable in this problem. So, we write capital phi as product of 3 functions, capital R which is a function of r, capital P which is a function of theta, and let us write capital F which is a function of phi. Now, if you plug it in, let us see what you get. So, first is of course, I have got 1 over r square d by dr of r square dr by r, and p times f will come out, because they do not depend upon r. This one is similarly 1 over r square sin theta d by d theta of sin theta, and this time it is dp by d theta, and r and f will come out, and 1 over r square sin square theta d square over d phi square of f, and this time r and p will come out. This is equal to 0. Now, we do the same thing again, that is, divide this equation by r p f, and the other thing that we notice is there is a 1 over r square all over, and so therefore, I can take that r square to the right hand side, it becomes 0. So, I am left with the equation which looks like the following. I get 1 over r d by dr of r square dr by dr plus 1 over sin theta times p d by d theta of sin theta dp by d theta plus 1 over f sin square theta d square f by d phi square, that is equal to 0. The first thing that we need to do is to realize that in this equation, I can take this sin square theta, multiply the entire equation by sin square theta, and realize then these two equations, these two terms, the radial term and the polar term, they are both theta appears there. On the other hand, this will give me just 1 over f d square f by df square. So, let me do that. So, let me multiply this with sin square theta by r d by dr r square dr by dr plus sin theta by p d by d theta sin theta dp by d theta. This is equal to minus 1 over f d square f over d phi square. Now, I give the same argument again. The left hand side is a function of r and theta, and small r and small theta varies on the left hand side. The right hand side, however, depends only on phi, and we are expecting this should be equal to that. That is not possible unless each one of these terms happens to be a constant. So, let us write that constant to be equal to some quantity like m square. Now, I am now in a position to solve what is known as the azimuthal equation. The azimuthal equation then becomes d square f over d phi square is equal to minus m square f. We know that the solution of this equation is e to the power plus or minus I m phi. What is m? The value of m can be fixed by saying that if phi increases by 2 pi, you say I am back to the same point. If the azimuthal angle changes by an amount 2 pi, I am back to the same point. So, my value of f must be cyclic, in the sense whatever is the value of f at some value of the azimuthal angle phi, that must be having the same value when the azimuth increases by an amount 2 pi, which is possible if e to the power plus or minus I m into 2 pi is equal to 1. So, if e to the power I m into 2 pi, that is equal to 1, then it is possible, which tells me that m is an integer, positive or a negative integer. So, in this equation my m is an integer, that has been worked out. Okay, let us look at the next equation. Now, having done that, identified m, so I will now write the equation in this way. Remember, I had divided by sin square theta, but now I have brought the sin square theta to wherever it is, and I have written 1 over r d by dr of r square dr by dr is equal to two terms. One is this term which was already there, and the other one is m square by sin square theta. This has made it possible for me to separate r and theta, the polar separation. So, therefore, once again with the type of argument that we have been giving, each one of these terms must be constant. I do not know what that constant is, but anticipating some result, let me put that constant to be equal to L into L plus 1. Of course, I have not yet said what is L. So, therefore, I can write my constant any way I like. So, I have got now two equations. So, the main equation is, the polar equation is 1 over sin theta d by d theta sin theta dp by d theta plus this L into L plus 1 minus m square by sin square theta into p equal to 0. You can simplify this equation by making a substitution of variable mu is equal to cos theta. If you do that, mu is equal to cos theta, d mu is equal to minus sin theta d theta. Now, since I know that the polar angle goes from 0 to pi, the mu which is taken to be equal to cos theta goes from minus 1 to plus 1. Straightforward to check that this equation can now be written in terms of the new variable mu like this. We will not actually be trying to solve this equation, but it turns out that this equation is well known in the field of differential equation, and the solutions are known to be associated Legendre polynomials. So, this is an equation whose solutions people know. We will be talking about the nature of solution little later, but let us look at that. So, this is called associated Legendre polynomials. So, my angle part of the difference of the Laplace's equation now has an e to the power I m phi times the associated Legendre which are characterized by L in addition to m. Now, incidentally, there are two types of solution there. One is written as PLM, another is written as QLM. Now, QLM goes to infinity as mu goes to plus or minus 1. PLM does not, but PLM also goes to infinity, that is, it diverges as mu goes to plus or minus 1, unless L happens to be an integer. So, therefore, I take the integer in that, the integer L, the L to be an integer, and then the solutions are given by PLM, which are of course functions of cos theta. And of course, you have to multiply it with e to the power plus or minus I m phi. Let us take a simple specific case. Supposing my solutions do not have azimuthal dependence. What it means is, my problem does not have a dependence on the azimuthal angle. In other words, there is azimuthal symmetry in the problem. Now, if there is azimuthal symmetry in the problem, the solutions cannot depend on phi, and the only way to do it is to take the m to be equal to 0. Now, if you put m to be equal to 0 in the equation of associated Legendre polynomials, the equation that I get is d by d mu 1 minus mu square. This time I have removed the Lm index d p by d mu plus L into L plus 1 into p equal to 0. This is known as the equation for Legendre polynomial. The previous one was called associated Legendre polynomial. So, the Legendre polynomials are essentially special cases of associated Legendre polynomial having m is equal to 0. Now, the solutions of these Legendre polynomial are also well known, and you can actually check very easily the solutions. It happens to be a polynomial in mu, which is a polynomial in cosine of theta. For instance, you will find that the 0th order polynomial is 1. It is very straightforward to check that if p is equal to 1, the left hand side is identically equal to 0, because it dp by d mu. If L is equal to 1, L is equal to 0, p 0 cos theta is 1. If L is equal to 1, then of course, this becomes 1 into 1 plus 1, which is 2, and you can check that p 1 of mu is nothing but mu itself. You can, that is fairly straightforward, because if p is mu, dp by d mu is 1. I have got a 1 minus mu square there. So, when you differentiate this with respect to mu, I get a minus 2 mu there. So, therefore, I get a minus 2 mu there, and here I have got L is equal to 1. So, it is 1 into 1 plus 1, which is 2, and p is mu. So, therefore, this equation is satisfied. And likewise, you can find that p 2 cos theta is half into 3 cos square theta minus 1. So, this is the spherical polar equation. Okay, so, what have we seen? We have seen that when I have azimuthal symmetry, my solutions are given by the angular part of the solutions are given by Legendre polynomial. I have not yet touched the radial equation, but in the remaining time let us look at what the radial equation looks like. If you recall that the radial part was 1 over r d by dr, r square dr by dr, that was equal to a big expression with angular part, and we put both of them as L into L plus 1. So, this is the equation. Split up this equation, you get an equation like this. This is actually an equation which is very easy to solve. You can check, if you take capital R to be going as r to the power n, then the equation is satisfied, and the value that n takes is L or L plus 1. So, as a result, the complete solution of this equation, whose properties we will be talking about in the next lecture, is given by A, which is a constant, r to the power L plus B by r to the power L plus 1 into P L cos theta. Next lecture, we will look at some applications of these solutions in 3 dimensions.